What's going on, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the 5-Minute Debate. As you can see, new week, new guest. This week, I am joined by the spectacular Jeff Haseley of Football Guys. Jeff, how is it going?
It's good, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. This is fun. I kind of like coming on and having like a quick conversation about this, because I think people can benefit from that, especially if it's kind of short, sweet, to the point, and they get their information and they move on and they take it for what they want. So yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. That is what we're all about here, obviously, at the 5-Minute Debate. If you're new to the show, 5's a loose guideline. It may go a little bit over, but as always, we have our timer. We are ready to go. And if you didn't read the title of the show, even, we are talking Allen Robinson versus Terry McLaurin this year for 2021 fantasy football. So, Jeff, I will pass it to you first here. What do you have on Terry McLaurin?
Well, I've got a receiver who has had a really, really strong last season. Last year, he had. I mean, you have to take a look at his overall body of work, right? And the quarterbacks that he had to work with. He had Dwayne Haskins, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen, and he managed 5 weeks of top 20 fantasy results. And interestingly enough, all 5 came in the first 10 weeks of the season, which if you're following up on McLaurin, he hurt his ankle twice last year, high ankle sprains even. One, we don't really exactly know when it happened, and the other one happened in week 11. Yep. So anything past week 11, that's the reason why, right? But he still played, and he played fairly well, and he played through the pain. And, like I said, he had 5 top 20 fantasy weeks, all in the first 10 weeks. If he didn't get hurt, I imagine that number goes up even higher, right? So, in my opinion, I need to ask you this, because I kind of want this to be a little bit more interactive. But
yeah, absolutely.
In terms of McLaurin versus Allen Robinson, we're doing like a tail of the tape type of thing.
Yep.
Would you agree that McLaurin is the better dynasty prospect?
I would, but again, it is interesting because they are still so close in age, because Terry did come in obviously significantly older. He's coming up, 26, turning 27, I believe, next year. Allen Robinson, 27, going on 28. So while I still want Terry in dynasty, I don't think it's as big of a gap given, the experience in the NFL that some would expect.
Right. Okay. I would argue that McLaurin is the better dynasty prospect. I think a lot of people would, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's fine. Yeah. We're talking about this year, and that's cool. But I just kind of wanted to at least get your understanding on where you were with both of them dynasty-wise.
I'm a huge Terry fan, just for the record, for everybody. Both these guys are wide receiver ones, as far as I am concerned. I think they are both locked in there pretty much. Terry's even going ahead of Allen Robinson right now. So, the public is with you on this as far as, ADP goes. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's just, I've seen Allen Robinson do more with similarly poor quarterback play. I mean, his entire career has just been a mishmash.
You're right. They do have that in common. They do have that in common.
It's unique. 2 elite guys that just have never really found a true quarterback to play with them. And Robinson has turned in, back-to-back years with Mitch and Nick Foles, back-to-back top 10 seasons. And I don't know if Terry would have been on pace for that had he not gotten hurt, or what his pace was through that first 10 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I do feel that the ceiling's very similar. I mean, they're both potential top 10, top 5 guys based on volume. I just think Allen Robinson's consistency is what puts him above for me right now.
Yeah, and McLaurin only has 2 years of sample size, right? McLaurin has 7.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I did a little bit of research on these guys just to take a look. I mentioned the top 20 weeks already. Yeah, McLaurin had 5. Robinson also had 5. And his were throughout the year, week 7, week 10, week 11, week 4, week 6. So pretty much, like throughout, no real rhyme or reason, right? He was just consistent. And he had 3 with Mitchell Trubisky. He had 2 with Nick Foles.
Oh, those names.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Actually, sorry, excuse me. The weeks that he had those top 20 was week 3, 4, 8, 12, and 14. Excuse me. I was telling you where he finished.
There it is.
But anyway, so those 5 weeks, again, no rhyme or reason. He was just consistent. So I looked at those 2 and I'm like, okay, all right, great. They're even. They each had 5 top 20 weeks. Robinson was a little bit better in terms with overall, right? He had, he finished 7th. No, he finished 4th, 6th, 7th, 10th, and 11th, right? So his lowest finish of his top 20 was 11th, whereas McLaurin had 2 top 18 finishes. If we're splitting hairs here, right?
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, all right, well, let's look at quarterbacks. McLaurin's coming up with, he'll have Ryan Fitzpatrick. Well, and Robinson's going to have either Andy Dalton or he's going to have Justin Fields. So the next question is, well, how do you feel about Dalton? How do you feel about Fields versus how do you feel about Fitzpatrick?
Yeah.
So
no, I'm with you on that. I see where you're getting at.
We don't really know what Fields is going to do. However, a lot of people are saying, hey, man, he could be the next Deshaun Watson. That's like his comp, which if that happens, absolutely great. And if that happens, then Robinson could be not just better than McLaurin, but Robinson could be a potentially a top 5 receiver. He just has that ability because there is no other wide receiver in Chicago in terms of target share that's really going to rival what Robinson can do, right? And we tend to see the top receivers in that type of category where that second wide receiver on the team, not so great in terms of target share, right? So Robinson definitely has that. I was looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick and just taking a look and seeing what he did in terms of his receivers. So he was with Miami last year, and he had 5 weeks where a wide receiver was in the top 20. And as far as Andy Dalton is concerned, Andy Dalton played like weeks 11 through 17.
The numbers are ugly. It's Andy Dalton.
Right? I mean, it's actually not that. It's not as bad as you think. It isn't really.
But they're not as where you want them to be. That's the key. Because Fitzpatrick, we've seen him. He can support several. He can support a top tier wide receiver 1. And I do think Terry is primed for that. I think he's going to get that role. Again, I don't think Curtis Samuel. Well, I like Curtis Samuel. He's not a true 1. I'm not worried about Kelvin Harmon. Diami Brown's a rookie. There's just not a lot on the outside, so it's similar. But I do think that offense, that defense, I think Washington's defense is better than Chicago. Again, as much as I love the Bears, I'm a Bears fan. We all know it. I think Washington has a better defense. They have a better run game. So I do think the Bears, as much as they would like to not put the ball in Andy Dalton's hands or, lean on Justin Fields heavily, I do think they have to. And because of that, I think that's where Robinson gets that target bump, which could even out, the efficiency between, 130 targets from Fitz versus 150 from, say, Andy Dalton, which is why these guys are coming in very similarly, but they're getting there in different ways. So we're running.
we're neck and neck. We're photo finish on this, I think.
Yeah,
I think my concern for me is
the closing argument here, Jeff.
Closing argument. All right. In my opinion, I think that McLaurin has the better quarterback situation than Justin Fields, simply because we just don't know. We don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know how he's going to be. We don't know how Andy Dalton would be if indeed he's the quarterback longer. And I do believe that Fields is more of a he's a dual threat quarterback. So I think there's going to be some opportunities where he's going to be running.
Yep.
Now that's a good point though, that you mentioned about Washington's defense being strong. They're not necessarily going to have to pass to win games.
I don't think they want to.
They won't, right?
Right.
So that's a concern as well. So there's pluses and there's minuses and there's pros and there's cons to each of these. It really just kind of comes down to your preference. And in my opinion, I'm really looking forward to seeing what McLaurin can do with a capable quarterback rather than just Kyle Allen, Dwayne Haskins, and Alex Smith. And That's where it draws the line for me. And I'm just not quite sure about Justin Fields and exactly how he's going to produce and how others are going to do, his complementary receivers and such, namely Robinson. So I'm just a little bit on the fence there. And I have to stress, it's a really close race between these guys.
Right. Yeah.
There's not really a right or a wrong answer, at least not right now. Now, maybe week 6, week 7 will be like, I told you. Or you might be that to me, right? So, but right now, that's my call. So there's my closing argument. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with anything you said. I do think Fitzpatrick is the better quarterback. Terry is as talented as Allen Robinson in every way. I think they're very, very comparable. Phenomenal professional athletes. For me, it's just, and I've already kind of touched on it, there's less competition in Chicago. Even with, horrible quarterback play, Allen Robinson has produced. And I do not think Justin Fields is Deshaun Watson year one. He may not ever be there in his career. That's a lofty standard to hold anybody to. But I do think he is an upgrade over Mitch Trubisky, who, can't throw left.
I agree with that.
We've seen it. As I've watched Mitch for 4 years, it was awful. He's an upgrade from Nick Foles, I'd like to believe. Nick Foles was not the Nick Foles of the Philly run. And I don't think Andy Dalton starts the whole year. I think we only get, as a Bears fan, I would not be surprised if Andy Dalton's out there week 1, thrown to the Wolves against LA, and then they bring in Fields because they don't want to subject their rookie quarterback to Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and just obliterate confidence. I think we see Fields early on. And I think while it may be ugly with Andy Dalton, Fields should elevate the offense enough to leave Allen Robinson in that, wide receiver 1 range with Terry McLaurin. But again, you said it. Both these guys are wide receiver 1s this year, as far as I'm concerned. They're both going to be very good. And at the back of the third, I don't think there's really a wrong pick there.
There you go. Yeah,
there you go, guys.
We both hit our points. We both kind of see how we could potentially fail in our assessments, right? No, really.
Yep. No, you're right, though.
It just kind of comes down to what you're more comfortable with. I actually really, really liked Terry McLaurin when he was a rookie and he had an interview. As a rookie, you're thinking, oh, what am I going to say? Or, and he was just very well spoken. He knew the offense really well. A lot of times you don't see that from rookies, let alone rookie wide receivers. And he was the exact opposite of what I would think a rookie wide receiver would sound like in an interview, right? So I was just automatically enamored with this guy. And, I've just really gotten a man crush on him from a fantasy sense since then. So
no, I hear you.
I am all over him, right? And that's just my opinion on McLaurin. And why do we root for a certain team when there's no rooting interest? Oh, they have a certain color. I like their uniforms, right? Or
you get a guy like Terry.
You ever
McLaurin.
watch a game that you have no dog in the fight, but yet at the same time you're like pulling for one particular team over another, and you don't really know why?
Time. The Chargers are my secondary team for no reason whatsoever. I have no tie to anything Chargers, and I love it.
There's something that drives you to want a specific, and this could be football, this could be baseball, basketball, tiddlywinks. One way or another, you're like, man, I'm pulling for that particular player or that particular team. I don't know why. I just kind of gravitate towards McLaurin. He's just kind of like my guy. So I really wish that I had my McLaurin hoodie, which I recently won actually through a contest, but
very nice.
It hasn't arrived yet. I totally would have worn it for this.
This is it. We'll run it back later in the season. We'll do a Terry versus Allen Robinson weekly 5-minute debate, and we'll let you rock it then.
Yeah. Hey, sounds good to me. You did offer a very interesting point though about Washington's defense. And you're not going to a defense that strong. You're probably not going to have a wide receiver that with 150 targets. That's just not going to happen. So if he's going to lead us to the promised land in terms of fantasy points, it's going to have to happen through touchdowns and just consistency. And
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, though. I don't
know if he's a volume guy. He's definitely. He had 9 games of 7 catches or more last year, with 2 high ankle sprains. That's impressive.
He's phenomenal. Again, there's nothing really bad. You can see how it can go wrong, But I still think both these guys, again, their floors are so high. Like, I mean, barring injury, and again, that's the same with every single player out there.
Mhm.
They're the number one for their team. They are tied to their quarterback. They're going to lead their team in targets. It's just a matter of who gets the touchdown luck, and does one of them out target the other by 20 or 30 targets. That's really
Right.
That's the way these two guys separate themselves. But that does it for us here. Another edition of the 5-minute debate in the book. Jeff, thank you so much for hopping on, man. This was a blast. Yeah, guys, as always, follow me over on Twitter at Justin_14P. Subscribe to the channel, let us know who you think won in the comments, and we will see you guys next week. See ya.